Hey everyone, Sean and I here together. Hey Sean, how you doing?
Hey, everybody. Good to see you.
Wonderful, wonderful hair. All right, folks. So we're continuing our series of the introduction to 3D concrete printing, and today we're on series three, and we're going to drill into or dive into either way applications of 3D concrete printing in construction. So we'll start out with just a few questions like we always do, and just kind of work through a couple of high level ideas. And Sean will enlighten us and educate us, and he and I will have a great back and forth here. So ready to do this, Sean?
Yeah, I don't know about all that, but I'll do my best.
Okay. Well, we'll try. We'll try to keep it entertaining for the people here. So, talk to us about what you've seen in the residential and the commercial space. Is it mainly residential and some commercial, or some commercial, or and what's that mix out there look like from what you've seen?
Well, what's been built and what's to come, I think, are two different things. We've been seeing a lot of houses pop up around the world, smaller structures. Then there's a couple multi-family, multi-floor units. There's multi-floor in North America and Canada, and one in Houston, Texas, which is very exciting. There is a 3-floor that Coba did, I believe, in the Netherlands, or was in Germany. But what's interesting is also on the commercial side of it, the largest 3D printed structure in the world is being printed right now by Printed Farms in Florida, and it's
Really?
to a horse farm. They did a lot of commercial buildings with their first couple builds for, they've got their own segment, but I believe that's going to be over 10,000 square feet. There's a bunch of really good updates online about it. I know a
And
company
that's
in
and
Canada.
just for the people listening to this, maybe a year from now, what we're talking 2023, right at the beginning of 2023, right? So that's kind of
Mhm.
just a timestamp that.
Yeah, and I definitely know of a couple of people who are up in Canada with a couple of machines, and they're looking to do massive, massive commercial projects. You can have a mixture of residential on top, commercial underneath, because as long as you can think it, theoretically, you should be able to print it. And there's some really cool applications coming in time. I know a developer who's trying to do over 100-unit apartment building and trying to work out the logistics on like how do you do
Amazing.
that.
Where's that project going down?
Well, it's
Is that
not
a
up and
secret?
running yet, but there's
Ah,
multiple people who are trying to, do projects like that. Think about all the residential investment that's been going up, the raise in rents that have been going up. Say you can cut 6 months or a year of your build time off, which it hasn't been done. So theoretically, I believe you can, but until we see it, we can't believe it. But what does that do for a return on investors' money, or a syndicate or venture capitalists to say, hey, we can get 100 units up and shave 12 months off it? That alone to do cash flow, I think, is very enticing
right.
to investors. But residential, there's so many applications that we haven't seen yet. We've seen a lot of standalone houses, but who's going to do a 5-plex or a 6-plex, or who's going to start doing, mini motels or pop up um, workforce housing around like resorts? I think is another great application of it. On top of accessible housing for people, like there's so many use cases that if
Absolutely.
you need to put up walls or a structure or emergency structures after say disaster, all the tornadoes and storms that have came across this country. I know that FEMA loves putting up, God bless them, single wide trailers.
Yes.
And then another storm comes by, such as Lake Charles or in some other areas, and those trailers get blown away again.
Yeah.
And it just seems like, hey, if we can put these things up quicker and faster and they're stronger, great. And, there's some materials that you can actually take the walls apart, break them down and put them into grinders, and you can reuse that material, if you want to
Amazing.
use it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean,
So
there's
maybe like
multiple ways.
you do a temporary housing that's strong, that's water resistant, that's very heavy, and definitely rot and wind resistant as well. And then like
Oh,
when
yeah.
that's all that maybe the society recovers or that region recovers, then like you said, hey, like, what do we do with all these 3D printed homes or shelters? Then like, well, we thought about that, and we have a way of kind of disposing of them that's efficient, and we could put that back in some other value stream, whether it's road building or fill or whatever, something like that.
You can do that, and also you can repurpose them if you can get those people into better accommodations. And back into the acclimatation of their lives of where they live. Maybe it's temporary housing to bridge the gap for homelessness. I see a lot of great options, especially with non-concrete, that Azure Homes and Mighty Buildings are doing, that might work better for some cities or municipalities than building Home Depot sheds. I'm not a fan of Home Depot sheds.
Yeah,
I know anything's better than nothing, but not the answer. So how do we, come up with answers or try new things or say, hey, let's repurpose a golf course and start fixing some of these issues? But that's it. There's a lot of people who are in office, mayors, government officials. They've had the same problem for, say, 100 years, and they haven't had a tool. So I think 3D printing, on-site, off-site, plastic, concrete, different materials, I think is a great tool to start looking at, testing with, and using so much of the, don't want to say misappropriated funds that can go out that just doesn't have the impact. I believe Gavin Newsom in California is stopping a couple $1 billion going for low-income housing because he says, look, we've been doing this the same way over and over again, and it doesn't make an impact that we want it to. So not saying we want this to get any worse. We want it to get better, but we need to really pause and see what's possible with this technology today and tomorrow.
right. Let's talk about another kind of a related field, and that's on the infrastructure and transportation projects. That's
Cool.
probably, I mean, so we're talking about homes and dwellings and I guess habitations for humanity or people. But as we all know, we all use bridges and roads and even maybe architectural elements. We see beautiful sculptures or planners or this or that. What have you seen out there, and what some of the cutting edge ideas that you've seen?
I think it's interesting, especially for infrastructure. Can you do, sewer lines, water runoff, actually round piping that you would have to precast with wood on the outside, fill it up with concrete every time, start making, new wood panels to do that. A lot of that can be done with 3D printed construction. We've seen it not just for residential, but there's great companies that are working on like just pillars. And inside of that, you'd put your rebar, and that would just be an extra structural reinforcement when you want to go up multiple floors. There's people doing everything from giant signs to pottery to fireplaces. I saw a guy was working on trying to do a pool. I was like, this is really cool.
Wow.
Sculptures I think are fantastic as well. There's so many applications for it. I mean, they're going to be pretty heavy.
Yeah, you don't just get the family back there and you move around the 3D printed picnic table and chairs. It's probably kind of like set pieces that are they'll stay in one spot.
Yeah, definitely. But what was the other part of that on top of infrastructure? I mean, there's
Yeah, so we got,
across the
I
world
think
that's
yeah, there's infrastructure, transportation, and then like even like structures and sculptures here. So I think I remember saying of recent, it had a little notoriety out there. There's a bridge. Was that 3D concrete printed or was that metal? I forget. I think in the Netherlands. Do you remember saying did you ever read up on that one?
I believe so. I believe there's more than a few bridges that they've been able to do in pieces and put together off-site and bring
Yeah.
to site. I mean, why not? And the freedom of architecture, the complexity is free when you have a 3D printer, as long as you can do the math and make sure you're a structural engineer. Everything can pass, but why not design? If you can make something beautiful and aesthetically pleasing to the eye, and a park or a bridge or something that in a neighborhood is going to enjoy and be around, why wouldn't you?
Right. The final one as we wrap up this series here, Sean, and that is, it's kind of related, but I guess site specific projects. So I guess maybe there's maybe a geographic challenge, or maybe a certain scope, rock formation or water. There's different things you could imagine. Maybe a beautiful tree if it's in the woods, and then also unique architectural designs. And I'll just lead out with a quick vignette of my own. And I'm forgetting kind of the details, but they were doing a large building in New York, kind of thing. Yeah, you and I we talked about this a while ago, and they did these molds, and then they basically 3D printed the molds, and they were very, very durable. And then they made all these molds, and then they put them as the facade on this giant New York skyscraper. So that's like a little bit different, like application of actually printing the 3D. They actually printed the form, and then they put the concrete in there. But
Mhm.
that type of thing is very interesting, whether you're using, like you've mentioned a couple times, yes, the focus is 3D concrete printing, but also there's other kinds of like polymers and other things. What have you seen in that space of kind of unique architectural elements and or unique, challenging actual site specific projects?
I think what's going to be really exciting is we're seeing more and more of artificial intelligence get cross mingled with architecture, and a
Right.
lot of designs that technically would not be possible using traditional methods, just because they're not cost efficient at all. And when you're developing, you've got to keep cost in mind. The complexity, like I said, is free, and I think in the coming years you're going to see more and more artists working with designers and architectures to try to revolutionize how we actually build and design
pushing
spaces.
pushing the boundaries of, I guess, architectural design, what we think is possible. I mean, we as a former builder myself, straight, square, that's easy to build,
So we
that's
get.
cheap, that's what we want. And then you see some of the latest designs or even the renderings that the architects are thinking of, and they're obviously incredibly, well, not obviously, but because we're not showing them right now, but they're extremely complicated and elaborate and very, very interesting and intriguing to the eye. So you can actually combine, cutting edge design, architectural beauty or aesthetic beauty, and
Mhm.
actually come up with even a stronger design because you can actually incorporate some strength in there. And that's kind of the perspective from my perspective as an engineer, as a builder, and some other things. So that those kinds of things are fascinating to me.
Yeah, hopefully I can just find a couple quick links and I'll put them in the show notes here for you guys to share. I mean, there's so many great examples of things that have been designed, things that have been built, and what's coming next. And in natural forms. I mean, I think we're all over square rooms. I never want to see a square room the rest of my life. So yeah, I mean, we're going to see who pushes the limits this year and into the decade. It's going to be exciting. It can bring on like a new generation of thinkers and architects in this space, and how do we build the next eco city, or how do we build the next you know mini mall, or whatever we're designing. Like, how can we take those elements and put them in and change the landscape of so many places we visit every day, for the rest of our lives.
That's amazing, man. I love that thought to carry us out of our of this episode here. So that's all we
Cool.
have for now, folks. Thank you for listening to another episode in this series. We love chopping it up between John and I, all the different things we've seen, and giving you all these kind of these stories centered around a couple of topics. And we hope that's informative. So until next time, Sean, thank you.
Print on.